Okay? So in other words, it's going to be a simple poem about cycles, the movement of cycles, okay? But the thing we want to point out now is at level 2B. So let's go there. We already wrote this down when we were working with Song of Hiawatha, and that is meter. Notice the rhythm of the second line. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls, along the sea sands damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. Only now let's slow it down and read it differently. I hope you're actually looking at the words with me. Take a look at the rhythm of these lines. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls, along the sea sands damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. See it? Look at the next one. Darkness settles on roof's walls, but the sea in darkness calls. Ba-bum, ba-bum. It's a very iambic foot, isn't it? Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. He's playing a very kind of rhythm-based poetic line to simulate, let's write it down, the movement of tide, the movement of waves. And of course, if you've ever been to the ocean, you kind of know a little bit about this, don't you, right? That there's this movement of the waves. Let's jump now, for both of our annotations, have them side by side, to level 3. And let's finish now in our conversation asking about level 3A, 3B. Let's begin first of all with Song of Hiawatha at level 3A. Relationships to other texts, okay? So here we go. At level 3A, what for you are your favorite films about the Old West? About Native Americans? Do you have a favorite film or TV show or video game or video itself that draws on the traditions that we would call Native American? Okay. What for you is your favorite movie about the native peoples and their traditions? Are you at all familiar with any film that celebrates that? A number of years ago, Kevin Costner made a really famous film called Dances with Wolves. If you are unfamiliar with that title, I'd write it down and take a look at it. It became a very, very popular movie because it tried to portray the native peoples as they really were. A peoples who lived on the land and didn't understand at all of these white faces coming out of the prairie that were going to take away their land. Okay? Let's ask at 3B about Song of Hiawatha. And let's ask you to maybe try to connect to Song of Hiawatha by asking you simply this question. What is for you, when you were a child, your favorite story? And who was for you your favorite storyteller? Did you have anybody in your life when you were young who could tell you a story and make you want to listen? For some of you, it was a relative. For others of you, maybe it was a teacher. When you were young, can you remember being young and somebody telling you a story? Were you ever told a story next to a fire? For example, you went camping or you were out somewhere and a fire got built as a kiddo and they told you a story. It might have been scary, might have been exciting. Okay? What for you are the most famous or best stories you heard as a kid? Just jot down really quickly a memory of that. Okay? What for you is the best way for you to think about the idea of telling stories? Do you prefer to read a story or to hear a story told to you? Okay? Go ahead and just jot down an answer to that question really quickly, okay? All right? And then let's jump to the second one real quickly. Here we go. The tide rises, the tide falls. And let's ask at 3A, what is for you your favorite show, TV show, movie, whatever, about the ocean? About the ocean and the tide, movement of the tide. Is there a film for you that you like that is set around the ocean? Okay? What is for you your favorite movie about a stranger who comes to town, does something, and then leaves? Now that I say that and you start thinking, some of you will say, whoa, a lot of video games are based on this notion. Some unknown person shows up, does something, and then leaves. And people go, who was that person? Of course, those of you who like Marvel Comics and your DC Comics, especially those kinds of films, you're altogether familiar with this idea that a stranger shows up, does something, and then leaves, right? That idea that's expressed in The Tide Rises, the Tide Falls. And now at finally 3B, let's ask this question. What is your view of the ocean? If you've never been to the ocean, would you like to go, and why? If you have been to the ocean, what do you like most about it? Is it a scary place for you? And for those of you that know about the oceans, is there an ocean you've never seen that you would like to see? If right now I could put you on a plane and take you to an ocean somewhere in the world, do you have a favorite that you would like to see right now? Is there an ocean for you you would like to see? Maybe it's one of the oceans down off of any number of coasts in Mexico. Some of our most beautiful oceans are there. Is it the ocean that we would qualify as around Hawaii? Maybe for some of you, you'd like to learn how to surf, so you'd like to go to some of the great surfing areas of the world off of the coasts of Australia, maybe, right? And of course, there's always the question about surfing and waves. Are you familiar with these people that get on these waves that are really large? If you haven't Googled a photograph that ended up in Sports Illustrated, all you got to do is type in 100-foot wave Sports Illustrated and Google it, and it will show you a picture that became one of the most famous pictures a couple of years ago of a guy on a surfboard surfing a 100-foot wave off the coast of Portugal. 100-foot wave. And this little guy, little speck, is on a surfboard surfing that wave. Of course, if he falls, he is, you don't swim out of a 100-foot wave, right? He survived it, and afterwards, all he could talk about was the sound of that wave, how loud it was. But it's a really great photograph. If you haven't looked it up, take a look at it. It's a really cool picture. It's one of Sports Illustrated's great pictures that year. All right, so an introduction to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about him.